The Kestrel Facility is a data center, but nobody there calls it that. We call it the barn, because it looks like one from the county road, long, low, metal-sided, painted a dull red that the sun's been bleaching for 30 years. It sits on 80 acres of nothing in the high desert. And the only reason it's out here is the cold nights and the cheap power off the old hydro line. My name's Theo Marsh. I'm a hardware technician. I swap dead drives, chase heat faults, and reseat cards that customers 3 time zones away will never see. That's the job. I've done it for 4 years. I want to tell you about the part of the job that isn't on the work orders, because I'm still trying to decide what I owe the people it named. Let me give you the ordinary version first, because the ordinary version is real, and I liked it. We run about 9,000 servers across 4 halls. Cold aisles, hot aisles, the usual. The floor hums at a pitch that gets into your teeth by hour 3, so everybody wears ear protection or earbuds. It's loud, it's dry, and it's boring in the specific way that pays well. I drive out at 6:40 every morning in a carpool with 2 other techs, Priya Renteria and a big quiet kid named Andreji. And we split gas and complain about the same things every day. The badge reader that fails when it's humid. The vending machine that only stocks the bad chips. The customer tickets written by people who've never touched a screwdriver. There are maybe 11 of us on site at any given time. 2 facilities engineers, a rotating security guard, the network people, us hardware techs, a supervisor named Dale Ostrowski, who's been here since it opened and knows where every conduit runs. It's not a haunted place. That's what I need you to understand. It's fluorescent lights and cold coffee and a break room with a cork board full of expired safety notices. People have birthdays here. Andreji brought in a sheet cake for his kid's christening. Priya keeps a photo of her mother taped inside her locker. It's a workplace. It's my workplace. The strange part lives in Hall C. Hall C is the old hall, the first one built, and most of it is decommissioned, now racks pulled, floor tiles lifted, cable trays empty. Customers moved off it years ago, but 3 rows in the back still run, and they don't belong to any customer. Dale showed them to me my second week, the way you'd show a new hire where the spare fuses are. He called them the archive, said they were legacy compliance systems, some old data retention thing the county requires. And my only job with them was to keep the fans clean and log the environmental readings twice a shift. Don't touch the drives. Don't connect them to anything. Just keep them cool and write down the numbers. So that's what I did. For a long time, I dusted the intakes, I logged the temps, I initialed the sheet on the clipboard hanging off the end of the row. It was the easiest task I had. The archive never threw a fault. It never got a ticket. It just sat there in the back of a dead hall, humming to itself. 3 rows of gray machines nobody claimed. Here's the thing about the archive that I ignored for almost a year, because it's the kind of thing you can ignore if you want to keep your job and your sanity in the same pocket. It printed. There's an old line printer at the end of the middle row, the kind with the tractor feed paper and the folding perforated sheets, the kind I hadn't seen since I was a kid watching my father do payroll. It's connected to the archive by a cable as thick as my thumb. And every so often, not on a schedule, not that I could find it, would wake up and chatter for a few seconds and spit out a line or 2, then go quiet. The paper just kept folding into a box on the floor. Nobody emptied it. Nobody read it. Dale said the printer was part of the compliance thing, that it logged access events, and I should leave it be. I left it be for a long time. That's the truth, and I'm not proud of the reason, which is that leaving it be was easier and nothing bad had ever come of it. The way I think about strange things, and I've had 4 years to work this out, is that most of them aren't asking anything of you. The floor hums. The badge reader fails when it's humid. The archive prints. You file these under the weather. You don't build a religion around the weather. You dress for it, and you go to work. I'm not a brave man, and I'm not a curious one, not by nature. I'm a man who likes a clean work order and a full tank of gas and a quiet drive home. The strangeness at Kestrel was, for a long time, just another thing I dressed for. What changed it was the name. It was a Tuesday in February, cold enough that the badge reader worked fine, and I was back in Hall C logging the archive temps when the printer woke up. I don't know why I looked that day. I'd walked past it 1,000 times. But I looked, and the paper had a line on it, and the line was a name and a string of numbers. Renteria, Priya A. And then a date, and then a time, and then a set of coordinates. The date was 9 days out. I stood there with the clipboard in my hand and I read it maybe 6 times. Priya, my carpool. The woman who'd complained about the bad chips 40 minutes earlier. Her name on tractor feed paper in a dead hall, with a date the following week and a location I didn't recognize written in latitude and longitude. I told myself it was a coincidence. Renteria isn't a rare name. Systems log people all the time. She badges into halls, she's in the access database. Of course, her name's in there. I told myself all of it, standing right there, and I almost believed it. Then I did the thing I still can't decide was smart or the beginning of everything. I tore the sheet off at the perforation and I put it in my pocket. I want to be careful here, because this is where I could make it sound like I understood what I was holding. I didn't. I just had a piece of paper with a coworker's name on it and a date that hadn't happened. That's all it was that night. I went home. I looked up the coordinates on my phone at the kitchen table. They pointed to a stretch of the interstate about 200 miles north, a spot with nothing around it. The kind of empty mile you'd only stop at if your car died. 9 days later, Priya didn't come to the carpool. She'd texted Andrej the night before she was driving north to see her mother, the one in the locker photo, who'd taken a fall. She'd left straight from her sister's place. And somewhere on the interstate, about 200 miles north, her car went off the road into the median, and she wasn't in it when the county found it the next morning. Doors locked, keys in the ignition, her phone on the passenger seat. Not a crash that would throw a person. Just a car stopped wrong on the shoulder and a woman who wasn't anywhere. They looked for 4 days. The coordinates on my sheet were within a half-mile of where they found the car. I didn't tell anyone about the paper. I want to be honest about that from the start, because the not telling is the spine of this whole thing. And I'm not going to pretend I was ever cleaner than I was. What was I going to say? I had a printout from a compliance server that named her a week early? They'd have thought I did it. I'd have thought I did it. So I kept the sheet folded in my wallet, and I went back to work. Because the mortgage doesn't care what your servers print. And I started, for the first time, in 4 years, actually reading the archive. Let me tell you what I learned, in the order I learned it, because the order matters. The printer doesn't log access events. That was Dale's story, and it isn't true. I stood in Hall C on a dead Sunday shift, and I read 6 months of folded paper out of the box on the floor. And it's all names. Names, dates, times, coordinates. Some of the dates are past, some are future. The paper doesn't sort them. It just prints them as they come, and they come out of order. Days and weeks scrambled together, like the machine isn't reading a calendar the way we do. I pulled the ones I could check. There was a name from the previous fall, a man named Aldous Feld, with a date in October and coordinates out by the salt flats. I searched it that night. Aldous Feld, 61, went missing in October on a rock hounding trip to the salt flats. Never found. There was a woman, Carla Bethune, dated last spring. Coordinates near a reservoir 3 counties over. Carla Bethune walked away from a campsite by that reservoir in May and hasn't been seen since. Case still open. The archive wasn't logging access. It was printing missing people. And it was printing some of them before they went missing. I need to describe the actual machines because I kept coming back to them like they'd explain themselves if I stared long enough. 3 rows, gray, unbranded, no vendor plate, no asset tag, nothing. Dale said legacy, but the drives inside are wrong for legacy. They run hot and quiet, and they're arranged in a way I've never seen in 20 years of touching hardware. In rings instead of rows. Like something built to spin toward a center. There's no keyboard, no monitor, nothing to type into. The only output the machines make is that printer, chattering to itself in a dead hall, feeding a box nobody empties. I brought it up with Dale exactly once, carefully, the way you'd test ice. The archive, I said. We were in the break room. The bad chips machine hummed. The compliance stuff in C. What's it actually retaining? Dale's a heavy man with a gray mustache and the flat calm of someone who's outlasted every crisis this place ever had. He didn't look up from his coffee. Records, he said. County thing. Don't overthink it. It prints names, I said. People's names. With dates. Now he looked up. And I've thought about the look a lot since. It wasn't guilt and it wasn't fear exactly. It was the look of a man watching a thing he'd hoped wouldn't happen finally start to happen. Tired. Almost sorry. Theo, he said. How long you been logging that row? Almost 4 years. And in 4 years, has it ever asked you to do anything? I said no. Then keep logging the temps, he said, and stop reading the paper. The paper's not for us. Reading it doesn't help anybody. It's already printed by the time you see it. You understand what I'm telling you? It's already printed. He got up and rinsed his cup and set it in the rack. And at the door, he stopped. You start reading it, you'll want to do something about it. And there's nothing to do. That's the part that breaks people, not the names, the nothing. I didn't stop reading it. Of course I didn't. Priya's photo of her mother was still taped inside a locker nobody had cleaned out. So I started keeping my own record. Not to feed anything, not to control anything. I want to be clear, the paper doesn't work like that. There's no keyboard. I can't add a name or erase one. The machines don't take input from me at all. I kept the record because I'm a technician, and when something's broken, you characterize the fault before you fix it. I bought a cheap notebook, and every shift I copied down what the printer had produced with the date and time it came out. And I cross-checked the names against the news and the sheriff's bulletins on my own time at home. Here's what the notebook told me over the next 2 months. The past dated names always checked out. Every one. If the archive printed a name with a date already gone by, that person had gone missing on that date, at those coordinates, and had not been found. Not died. The archive doesn't print the dead. I checked that too. There's an old cemetery database the county keeps, and none of my names are in it. Missing. Specifically missing. People who drove off and left a locked car, or walked away from a tent, or stepped out of a house and didn't come back, in places with nothing around for miles. The future dated names were rarer, maybe 1 in 20, and I only ever caught 2 of those in time to understand them before the date came. Priya was the first. The second I'll get to. I told Andrej some of it, because I had to tell someone, and he'd driven the carpool with Priya for 2 years, and he wasn't sleeping either. Andrej is a practical kid, younger than me, built like a door, and he doesn't spook. I showed him the notebook in the parking lot one evening with the engine running for the heat. He read at it a long time. Then he said, "You think the servers are doing it, taking them. I don't know. Because if the servers are doing it, we unplug the servers." He said it simple, like it was a work order. Trip the breakers on that row, kill the archive, no more names. We could do it Sunday, nobody's on. I know where the panel is. And I want you to notice that my first reaction wasn't relief. It was fear, because I'd already thought of unplugging them the first week, and something had stopped me, and it took me a while to work out what. The archive doesn't feel like a cause. It feels like a symptom. Dale said the paper's already printed by the time we see it, and I think that's truer than he knows. I don't think the machines are reaching out and taking these people. I think the machines are the only thing in the world that can see it happening, that whatever takes these people has always taken them. Out in the empty miles, in the places with nothing around. And somewhere along the line, somebody built a machine that could hear it, and stuck the machine in a barn in the desert, and told the rest of us it was a compliance archive. If we unplug it, I told Andred, we don't stop anything. We just go blind. Blind's better than this, he said. What's the point of seeing it if you can't stop it? That's just... He shook his head. That's just being made to watch. We didn't agree. We still don't. That argument is the one we keep having, in the carpool, in the parking lot, at 3 a.m. by the vending machine. Andrej wants to kill the archive because seeing without power to act is its own kind of cruelty. I want to keep it running because the 2 future names I caught in time were the only chance anyone ever had. And I didn't take that chance with Priya, and I've had to live in that. Let me tell you about the rows themselves, one at a time, because they're not the same, and the difference is where this gets bad. The first row prints the past. That's the bulk of it, the missing already missing, names and dates gone by. I came to think of that row as the record. It's terrible, but it's inert. Reading it is like reading a wall of the dead. Feld, Bethune, dozens of others, going back years, coordinates scattered across the whole region, always the empty places. I filled 30 pages of my notebook off that row alone. Andrej is the one who noticed the pattern I'd missed. The coordinates aren't random. Plot them on a map and they cluster along old routes, the interstate, the county roads, the reservoir access, the salt flat trails, ways people travel alone. The archive isn't watching a place, it's watching the going alone. The second row prints the near, names dated within days, past or future, always close. This is the row that printed Priya. It's the row I watch now, every shift, standing over the box with my notebook while the floor hums, because the near row is the only one where the date's close enough that a person could still be warned. It printed a name in March. A woman named Dori Vasquez, dated 4 days out, coordinates by a rest stop on the county road. I couldn't find a Dori Vasquez anywhere. No listing, no address, nothing. So I drove to the rest stop on the 4th day, and I sat in my truck all afternoon like a fool. And around 5, a woman pulled in, alone. And I walked up to her car with my heart going and asked, feeling insane, if her name was Dori. It wasn't. Her name was something else. She looked at me like I was exactly the kind of man you don't want approaching your car at a rest stop. And she left fast, and I felt like garbage. But she left, and no Dori Vasquez was ever reported missing that I could find. I don't know if I saved her. I don't know if she was ever going to be taken. That's the nothing Dale warned me about. You can't even tell if you did anything. The third row is the one I don't like to talk about, and it's the reason I'm telling you any of this. The third row barely prints at all. Weeks go by. It's set slightly apart from the other two, and its printer is quieter. And when it does wake up, it prints only one line, and then stops for a long time, like it costs the machine something. In 8 months of reading, the third row printed 4 names. 3 of them I couldn't identify, no dates that resolved, no coordinates I could place, just names and a set of numbers that didn't parse as latitude and longitude at all. The 4th name the third row printed. It printed last Thursday. I was in Hall C at the end of my shift. The quiet printer woke up. I stood over it while it chattered its one line, and it fed the paper up out of the slot. And I read it in the fluorescent light with the floor humming through my boots. Marsh, Theo R. My name, my middle initial, and where the coordinates should be, where every other line has latitude and longitude or those numbers I can't parse. There was a date, no location at all. Just a date, and the date was the day I started at Kestrel. 4 years ago, my first day. Printed last Thursday, on the row that sees the ones who go alone in the empty places. With the date not of when I disappear, but of the day I first walked into the barn. And Dale handed me a clipboard and showed me a row of gray machines and told me to keep them cool and never read the paper. I've been carrying it in my wallet next to Priya's sheet. 2 folded pieces of tractor feed paper. Hers with a future that came true. Mine with a past I lived through. Printed as if it were still coming. I haven't shown Andred. He'd have his hand on the breaker before I finished the sentence, and I keep thinking about what Dale said. Has it ever asked you to do anything? And I keep thinking, no, 4 years it never has. And then I think about the third row. Quiet, waiting, printing a name only when it costs it something. And I think about how the archive never once printed the name of anyone who works in the barn. Until now. I did what a technician does. I tried to prove the machine wrong before I let it scare me. That first night, I took the sheet home and laid it flat under the kitchen light and photographed it. Then I pulled up my own hire paperwork. I keep everything, a whole accordion folder, because I've been laid off before, and you learn to keep your paper. My offer letter, my first badge printout. The date on all of it matched the date on the sheet. My start day, down to the day of the week. The archive hadn't guessed it. It had it exactly, the way it had Priya's coordinates exactly, within a half mile. So I did the next thing. I checked whether the machine could have pulled it from the Access database. My start date lives in the HR system, sure. But the archive isn't connected to anything. I'd traced its cabling myself, months back, on a slow Sunday. That thumb-thick line from the printer runs into the middle rack and stops. No network drop, no fiber. The rows aren't on our management VLAN. I'd assumed for 4 years they were air-gapped legacy junk. And the one useful thing about being wrong about everything else is that this part held up. The archive could not have read my hire date off any system because the archive isn't on any system. It knew my first day the way it knew Priya's last one, out of the same nowhere. I want to tell you I slept on it. I didn't. I sat at the table until the coffee went to acid in my stomach, and around 4, I did the small, stupid ritual I do when I can't fix a thing. I made a list. What I know, what I can test, what I can't. Under can't test, I wrote, why me, and under it. Later, I wrote, why the start date and not an end date. And I underlined that twice, because that was the part that didn't fit the pattern, and the part that, if I'd been honest, was the only thing keeping me from being afraid in a simple way. Everyone else the archive named got coordinates, a place they'd be taken. I got a date I'd already lived through and no place at all. The next shift, the routine went wrong in the smallest way, which is how it always goes wrong out here. Twice a shift, I logged the archive temps. Intake, exhaust, ambient. Initial the sheet on the clipboard. 4 years, same clipboard, same cheap pen on a string. I logged the morning read, hung the clipboard back on its nail, went and did real work, reseated a card in Hall A, closed 2 tickets, ate a sad sandwich in the break room while Andrej argued with the chip machine. Normal day. Then the afternoon read, back in C, and I lifted the clipboard off the nail, and the morning line was gone. Not smudged. Gone. The row I'd filled in that morning, 650, my initials, 4 numbers I remembered writing, was blank. Clean paper. The rows above it from days before, all there. The rows below, blank like always, waiting. Just my morning entry, lifted out, like it had never happened. I stood there and did the reasonable things. Checked I hadn't grabbed a fresh sheet. Checked the clip. Checked the floor for a dropped page. Then I checked my own hand, because by then I'd have believed I imagined writing it. Except the pen. The pen on the string was out of ink at the tip, dried. And there was a faint dent in the paper where a pen had pressed and left no line. Something had written my morning entry and then unwritten it, taken it back the way it takes people, left the shape of it and none of the substance. I logged the afternoon read below the blank space. My hand wasn't steady. That's worth saying, because in 4 years, my hand had always been steady on that clipboard. The archive had never once cared what I wrote on it. It cared now. Andrej caught it before I told him. That's the thing about Andrej. He doesn't spook, but he doesn't miss either. We were in the carpool, his truck this week, and he'd been quiet the whole county road, and finally he said, not looking over, "You're doing the thing Dale said. You're wanting to do something about it." I always want to do something about it. No. He downshifted for the cattle guard. Before, you wanted to warn people. The rest, stop, lady. That's outward. This is different. You've gone inward. You keep checking your own pockets. He glanced at me. What did it print, Theo? I didn't answer fast enough. It printed you, he said. Flat, like reading a ticket. Didn't it? That's why you won't do Sunday with me. You think if we kill it, it does something to you. I don't know what it does. Then let me kill it and we find out. He pulled into the lot, killed the engine, and the quiet after a diesel is its own kind of loud. Here's what I can't get past. You keep saying it's a symptom, not a cause. Fine. But a symptom you can read is still a warning. My grandmother had a cough for a year, and everybody said it's just a cough. It's a symptom. Nothing to do about the thing underneath. You know what would have helped? Reading the cough, doing the scan. You don't leave the machine on and just transcribe it into a notebook, Theo. That's not characterizing a fault. That's keeping a diary at a car crash. He wasn't wrong. That's what made him hard to argue with. I told him the thing I hadn't told him, because I owed him that much for the arguing. It gave me a date, not a place, I said. My start date, not an end. Everybody else gets where they'll be taken. I got when I arrived. I think that means something, and I don't know what. And until I know what, I don't want you pulling a breaker that might be the only thing making the difference. He sat with that. Then he said the thing that's kept me up since. Or the breaker's the only thing that saves you, and you're too scared to find out. You ever think the reason it named you is so you'd protect it? I went back through the notebook that weekend with Andrej's questions sitting on my chest, and the old sections started reading like warnings I'd filed under weather. The first row, the record, all those past names, Feld and Bethune and the rest, going alone in the empty places. I'd read that row as a wall of the dead and felt nothing but the dull grief of a list. But on Dredge's map, the clustering along the routes, the interstate, the reservoir, the salt flats, I looked at it fresh and saw what I'd refused to see, which is that Kestrel sits in the middle of that map. Not at the edge, the center. Every route the archive watches passes within an hour of the barn, and the barn is the still point they all circle. I'd told myself the machine was stuck out here for the cold and the cheap power. But you don't build the thing that hears the taking at the edge of where the taking happens. You build it at the middle. Somebody chose this 80 acres. Somebody knew. The near row, Priya's row. I went back to her line and read the time on it, which I'd never focused on because the date was the thing that gutted me. The time was 6:40 in the evening. The county put her car on the shoulder around 6:40 in the evening. But 6:40 is also the time our carpool leaves the lot every morning. The near row hadn't just given me her death. It had rhymed it with our routine, put her taking at the mirror hour of the one thing we did together every day. And I'd walked past that detail for months because I didn't want to see the machine being clever. It wasn't a log. Logs aren't clever. This chose its times. The rest stop. Dory Vasquez, 4 days out. The woman who wasn't Dory. I'd filed that under the nothing. Couldn't tell if I'd saved anyone. Felt like garbage. Moved on. But that Sunday I searched the name one more time, wider, and found it finally, not in a missing persons bulletin, but in an obituary from 11 years ago. Dory Vasquez, died young, buried 3 counties over. The archive had printed a dead woman's name onto the near row and sent me to a rest stop to intercept a living stranger who happened to pull in alone. I'd told myself the machine doesn't print the dead. It doesn't, on the first row. But the near row had used a dead name like a mask, like bait, to move me, to get me in my truck and out to a specific mile on a specific afternoon. I don't know what would have happened at that rest stop if I hadn't gone. I don't know if the machine sent me to save the stranger or to put me there for some reason of its own. That's the part that turned my stomach on the second reading. I'd thought I was acting on the archive. The archive had been acting through me. The third row, my row now. 3 names before mine I never identified, numbers that didn't parse. I typed those numbers into everything that weekend coordinates in other formats, timestamps, phone numbers, badge IDs. One of them finally resolved when I stopped treating it as location and treated it as duration. Days. The number was a count of days. I did the arithmetic backward from the print date on the sheet, and it landed on a start date, the way mine had. The third row doesn't print where people are taken. It prints the day people started. And when I searched the 3 names against Kestrel, against old org charts, against Dale's endless institutional memory the next week, 2 of them had worked here. Before me, technicians on the archive row, names Dale had never once mentioned in 4 years. I asked him. I didn't ask carefully this time. Ostrowski. Who logged the archive before me? Dale was at the corkboard, thumbtacking a new fire drill notice over an expired one. He didn't turn around. Couple guys. Names. Long time ago. Wembley, I said, and Cho. The 2 names off the third row that had worked here. They logged that row. The machine printed them, same as it printed me. Where are they, Dale? He finished the thumbtack, squared the notice. When he turned around, he had the tired, almost sorry face again. And this time, I understood it wasn't sorrow for the missing out on the routes. It was sorrow for me. You weren't supposed to read the third row, he said. The first 2, fine. Everybody who lasts starts reading the first 2. And it doesn't matter. It's already printed. But the third row's not about them out there. He nodded vaguely at the county road, the routes, the world. The third row's about in here. It prints the ones who tend it. Wembley read too much. Cho read too much. They wanted to do something about it. He said it gently. It doesn't take the ones who leave it alone, Theo. Wembley transferred to the Phoenix site. Fine, alive, has grandkids. Cho quit and drives a delivery route now. I get a Christmas card. The row printed their start dates because that's the day they became something it could name. Not the day they'd vanish, the day they signed on to watch it. It's not a death warrant. He searched for it. It's an intake record. It's telling you you're on the list of people it's aware of. That's all. Long as you stay a reader and not a fixer, that's all it ever is. And if I fix it, then you find out what happened to the readers who tried. He picked up his coffee. Wembley and Cho didn't try. That's why they're fine. There were others who did. Their names don't print at all anymore. You can't be named if there's nothing left to name. I want to tell you I took the deal Dale was offering. Stay a reader, log the temps, keep the diary, don't fix, live. It's a real deal. It's the deal he'd taken. 30 years, flat and calm, and outlasting every crisis. Because he'd decided long ago, the machine only hurts the ones who reach for the breaker. It was the coward's deal, and it was survivable, and I almost took it. Then the near row printed my mother. I need to back up 1 inch, because this is the part I kept out of the front of the story, the way you keep the thing that matters most behind the smaller, true things. My mother lives alone, 80 miles east, off a county road, in the house I grew up in. She won't move. She drives herself to the store and the clinic, and she does it alone, because my father's been gone 6 years. And she says she's not going to sit and wait. Every route the archive watches, she's on one of them, alone, once a week. And I have spent 4 years not letting myself think about that, while I read a machine that hears exactly that kind of going. The near row printed her name on a Thursday. Fielding. Margaret. Her maiden name, which she went back to after Dad, which isn't in any system I badge into, which Kestrel had no way to pull. A date 6 days out. Coordinates on the county road between her house and the clinic, a spot I know, a spot with nothing around it, a low place where the cell signal dies. Dale's deal died in my hand the second I read that line. You can be a reader about strangers. You cannot be a reader about your mother. So I broke the rule. The one rule Dale gave me on my second week and repeated in the break room. Don't touch the drives. Don't connect them to anything. I'd kept that rule for 4 years without effort because I'd never had a reason to break it. Now I had the only reason there is. I didn't do it to destroy the archive Andridge's Sunday breaker plan, kill it, go blind. I did the opposite. I thought if the machine could hear the taking, maybe it could be made to hear me. There's no keyboard, no monitor, nothing to type into. But there's the printer, and a printer's just a language going one direction. And I've spent my life making machines talk to each other. I brought in a cheap serial interface, and I did the thing you're never supposed to do to a system you don't understand. I put myself on its cable, in line, between the middle rack and the printer, where the 1 thumb-thick line runs, not to read the output, to push something back up the line, her name and a word. I sent Fielding. Margaret and I sent cancel, over and over, into a machine with no input, because I didn't know what else a man does with a printer that names his mother. The printer stopped for 3 days, no chatter, nothing on any row. Dale noticed he notices everything, and he looked at the dead printer and then at me, and he didn't say a word, which was worse than anything he could have said. On the 3rd day, it woke up. Middle row, it printed her name again. Same coordinates. And under it, a second line it had never printed for anyone. A line that wasn't a name or a date or a place. It printed, Reader Marsh, Theo R. Substitution Noted. And then my start date again. And then a new date, 6 days out, the same day as my mother's. I'd asked it to cancel her. It had answered the only way a thing like that can answer. Not by sparing her, by offering the trade. Substitution Noted. It couldn't unhear the taking on the county road. But it could hear who was standing on the cable asking. And it could put him on the list in her place. And it told me so in the flat clerical language of a machine that has been keeping intake records in a barn in the desert longer than I've been alive. Someone paid before I ever touched the cable. And I found out who that same week, because Dale finally told me the rest. The way you tell a man something once you've watched him do the thing you hoped he wouldn't. The others who tried the ones whose names don't print anymore. There was a woman, Halloran, ran the archive in the 80s. Her daughter's name came up on the near row. Halloran got on the cable, same as me, near enough. She made the substitution. The daughter lived to be old. Halloran's name never printed again, on any row, because there was nothing left to name. She didn't vanish on a county road. She just stopped being anywhere the machine could reach, which is the same thing dressed for indoors. Dale had watched it happen. Dale had logged the temps the week it happened. Dale had said nothing for 30 years, because saying something is reaching for the breaker, and Dale decided a long time ago to live. Here's the compromise I made, and I'm not going to dress it up. I had 6 days. I could pull my line off the cable, take back the substitution if it could be taken back, go blind like Andrej wanted, and hope the near row was wrong about my mother the way it might have been wrong about Dory Vasquez. Hope, hope, hope. The whole time knowing that every past name on the first row came true, every single one. Or I could leave the substitution standing, let it name me instead of her, and spend 6 days trying to be the kind of man it couldn't reach, the way Halloran did, whatever that turns out to mean. I called my mother. Awkward the way our calls always are. Both of us bad at it since Dad. I told her not to drive to the clinic that week. Made up a thing about the road being closed. A lie, a small one. The kind you tell to survive a Thursday. She said the road's fine. She drove it Tuesday. I said, please. She went quiet, the way she does. And then she said, you sound like your father. She said she'd have her neighbor take her. She said it to get me off the phone, and I let her. Because a lie that keeps her out of one low place for 1 week is still worth telling. Even if I can't tell her why. Even if I'll never be able to tell her why. Then I went back to work. That's the part nobody warns you about. There's no dramatic last shift. There's just the next one. The badge reader failed because it was humid. The chip machine ate Andrej's dollar. I logged the archive temps twice, intake, exhaust, ambient. Initialed the sheet with a fresh pen because the old one had dried. And the morning entry stayed on the clipboard this time, didn't lift out. And I don't know if that means the machine's done with me or just patient. I closed 3 tickets. I ate a sandwich. Life kept its shape around the thing at the center of it, the way it does, the way it has for everyone who's ever worked in a barn, in the desert, and read a row they weren't supposed to. Andrej knows now. All of it. He didn't say, I told you so. He just said, I'm not pulling the breaker while your name's on the cable. And I understood that he decided to keep me alive over being right, which is the best thing anyone's done for me in years. We drive the county road together now, both of us. So neither of us is ever going alone. It's not much. It's what we've got. My date's the day after tomorrow. The same day the near row gave my mother, the day I stood on the cable and took off of her and put onto me. I don't feel taken. I feel like a man going to work. Maybe that's what Halloran felt, right up until she wasn't anywhere. Maybe Substitution Noted is a promise the machine keeps slow, over years, the way it kept Priya's in 9 days and kept Feld's forever. I've stopped being able to tell the difference between a warning and a sentence. And Dale was right that that's the part that breaks you, not the names, the not knowing what the names are for. I came on shift this morning and did the read. And the third row, the quiet one, the one that only wakes when it costs the machine something, had printed in the night. One line. I stood over it with a fresh pen in my hand and the floor humming through my boots, and I read it in the fluorescent light. It wasn't my name this time. It was Andrij's. His full name, the long one off the christening cake, and where the coordinates go, where mine had a date and my mother had that low place on the county road. His line had just 3 words, in the flat, clerical hand the machine uses when it's talking about the ones who tend it, and not the ones out there going alone. Next reader noted, "The printer's already gone quiet again. The box on the floor is filling with paper nobody empties. And in 2 days, if the machine keeps its promise the fast way, there'll be a row in that barn that still needs logging. Twice a shift, intake and exhaust and ambient, and a clipboard on a nail with a fresh pen on a string. And someone will have to keep it cool and read the temps and be told. His second week, the way I was told, the way Wembley and Cho and Halloran were told. Don't touch the drives, don't connect them to anything, and whatever you do, don't read the paper."